I will do that this week. I'll go to the CCLD and make sure that we answer questions. Let me show you what else we have.
My parking costs never came in the mail.
I just added the class. Do you have a syllabus?
Sort of. I don't have one printed out. It's online.
Okay.
But are you not on my list yet?
I just added it this weekend.
What's your name?
Crystal Asuncion.
No, you're not on here, but that's fine. So when I hand this out, put your email address next. Like put your name down at the bottom with your email address.
Okay.
And make a little note. Please send me the syllabus.
Okay.
And then I'll just please send me the intro email.
Okay.
And that'll have the syllabus and some other information needed. Okay?
Sounds good. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, that's all working well. Nice. Minimize that.
Sometimes these organization right at the top of the front page. When you go, So, and did you see this is our logo? So exactly, and then it's stupid. Very serious. And it's turned, basically. Well, and then this one right here. This is Devin. Haley, what's Devin's last name?
Callaway.
Devin Callaway. He's local.
I actually know who that is. My buddy used to say it back in the day.
Well, this is him and his daughter, and that day he was out teaching the kids how to do a whole bunch of different things. Well, he actually taught my son how to drop in. Yeah, that's my oldest son. And my youngest son.
Technically, it's not starting yet.
That is actually Hayden's nephew. And Devin taught my boy how to drop in and how to roll in.
Oh, come on. Seriously?
And then when the kids like to come out,
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I old enough that when I break for a long time. Yeah, you're afraid of bone.
Okay, how is everybody? Good? Cool, me too, actually. So, Crystal, right? Welcome. This is what you will see as soon as you send me the email to remind me and I send it to you. But for everybody else's benefit too, just kind of touching base on where we are. I put together 2 brand new lectures for you guys for today that I've never done yet. And I'm psyched because they were missing. They were missing as part of this class, and it's something in this class only that I don't do in my small business class. Because to me, a lot of the skill sets are the same. The only real difference is you're going from idea to new venture in this class, and in the small business class, you're going from existing venture to more successful existing small venture. So I really wanted to talk about, thinking entrepreneurially and recognizing opportunities, finding opportunities, how to broaden your mind a bit as an entrepreneur, as someone who's trying to find the best way possible to make new ventures happen and make them happen as successfully as possible. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I actually have a nice little not a test per se, but it's a survey on how you think and how conscious you are about how you think. And I about halfway through the lecture, I want to hand this out, have everybody take it, and really, I don't even need the results back. Just it's more for your own benefit as we go forward in developing some strategies you're going to have for how to think a little more broadly as an entrepreneur. And then we'll talk a little bit about LinkedIn and your PDPs, but also about sort of an addendum to the PDP that I want you to do, which is a little plan on actions or like habits that you're going to start in the future to push yourself to think more entrepreneurially. And that's based on some of the stuff we talked about today. And then we'll start getting into, well, next week, we'll talk a little bit about product development next week, and then we really start getting into the guts of all the lectures. Another thing that I wanted to touch base about today is just groups and next steps. So once I get done with the lecture, I need two things. So we basically got a group of folks who are going to work on the drone project, a group of folks who are going to work on the irrigation project, a group of folks who are going to work on software projects, plural, a group of people who are working on Shifty, the not-for-profit, and a group of people who are other and haven't decided yet. I need for each of those groups, you don't have to do it here in class, but I need you to send me between now and Thursday the availability of each group member for meetings, for project work. A lot of what's going to make the projects in this class successful is at least one group member being able to go to this networking event, at 7:30 on a Thursday night or whatever. So depending, I need to know when people's available hours are in each group so that I can kind of structure the project around that. So next step for all these projects is for each group to send me, yes?
What if our schedule varies every week?
Then say that and give me your best estimate for the next couple of weeks.
All right.
Is that okay? So if your schedule varies each week, also an acceptable answer would be I tend to have 2 evenings per week where I could show up an event if necessary for the project, but they vary. Sometimes it's Tuesdays and Thursdays, and sometimes it's Mondays and Wednesdays. And for the next couple of weeks, it's going to be Tuesday, Thursday. Like the rest of the semester, I don't know. That would be an acceptable answer. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. Cool. Or I have a window of time between, noon and 5 every Wednesday where I don't have classes and I am going to be doing homework, but if I needed to do project work, that's really your homework for this class. I could do it in this window. Whatever works, I need to know from each person your schedule availability. I need to know it by group, but you guys actually don't know all of your fellow group mates. Yeah, I mean, the Shifty people do, but everybody else, you don't know who the other people on the drone project are, who the other people on irrigation are, who the other people on software are. So the next thing I need to know to get the projects going is availability. I did talk to, for everybody interested in software projects, I did talk to the advanced software engineering class professor, just touching base. I'm hoping he could come by and talk to us on Thursday, but if not, that's what I need the calendar for, because he's got some app ideas that his students are looking at already. We've got a short list of app ideas we've talked about in this class, and we need to put together a big list of app ideas. And there's 17 different students in here that are interested in software projects. He's got a whole class probably full of 20 to 30 students. I don't know exactly how many he has. And we basically need to match up students with projects. So if he can come in here and talk, great. Otherwise, we need to find a time when as many people as possible can meet, and we'll get students from his class to come too. Make sense? Okay. So that's that. Without further ado, let me pass around this sheet. And if your name has red next to it here, it means I'm still missing something from you. Okay? So there's columns for projects. So if you didn't happen to be here in class last Thursday, then I couldn't put you on the spot for one of the categories. Okay? Other is a category. Like if you told me other or wait until later, that's on here. But if you didn't happen to be here, I need to know which of those categories: drones, irrigation, smart irrigation, software development, the not-for-profit for group home for kids called Shifty, or Shout now. Sorry, I'm still getting used to this name change too, or some other project. I'm talking with a couple. There's going to be some fun options for identifying other projects too, but I need you to tell me if your name has red in the project column. And Crystal, was it? Yeah. Crystal, this goes for you too because you just joined the class. So I need to know which of those 5 project options you want to do, and then I need a LinkedIn connection request from you, and I need a professional development plan. It's a little template that I send attached to the intro email. So as soon as you put your email address on here, I'll send that to you. If your name has red in the LinkedIn or the professional development plan column, that means that I don't have it yet for whatever reason, okay? So when you're doing the sign-up sheet, please take a look at this red next to your name. Okay. Brand new, fun lectures on entrepreneurial thinking. So, the entrepreneurial decision-making environment.
Professor,
Yes.
should we sign that as our? Is this a roll sheet?
Yeah.
Roll sheet?
Oh.
Yeah. Sorry. It's not just checking. It's also like as soon as like I think next class session I'm going to rearrange seating so that I have groups sitting together. It makes it easier for me to remember faces. Then I'm going to put together a little map of everybody's faces, and I'll memorize them. So after about another month, I won't need you to sign that sheet. I'll just be able to see. Okay, nope, not here. Okay, yes, here. But and it also helps me get to know you guys. But right now, I still need you to sign that sheet. Thank you, Stephen, for asking. Okay, so entrepreneurial decision-making environment. I really put some thought into this over the weekend. What do I want to talk about that I think is value added for your thinking at the front end of trying to start a new venture? And like I think there's some main factors that characterize life in general, characterize any environment that you could be in to start a new business. That are the relevant things to realize. First of all, there's an immense amount of uncertainty. Like, if you think about the amount of knowledge you know as any one individual person versus the amount of knowledge you don't know, like the vast majority of information out there, you don't know. And when you're trying to decide if a new venture is going to work or not, most of the information that you need to make that decision, you don't know. But you still have to decide to go forward and give it your best shot, even though you don't know if it's going to work or not. So, you need to be cognizant of the fact that there's a lot of information out there you don't have, and constantly be trying to get more information. But also realize and be comfortable with the fact that you're going to be making decisions in uncertainty, and realize that sometimes you make the wrong decision. It's just bad luck. But you try your best to expose yourself to as much information as possible. In addition to that, there's a lot of time pressure. I mean, it's depending on the nature of any new venture. Like I promise you, there are students at almost every university in the world right now that are working on a UAV with solar panels on it. Like, Omar's not the only one. And whenever somebody comes up with me, not every university, but a lot. I mean, anytime you come up with a new idea, you can bet that in the society we live in, with 7+ billion people on the planet, somebody else has your idea at the same time you do. And in a certain to a certain extent, it's who gets there first. Even for Shout, there's somebody out there besides this group that's thinking about opening a new group home. The nice thing about what you're trying to do is, like, in some ways, I think all of you would be happy if your venture didn't succeed, because that means that all of the children who need a good, supportive place to live have one, and there's no more need in the marketplace. But I'm sure you're not the only one doing it. And to find the right location, to get the best sort of place in line with the relevant powers that be, grant-wise and bureaucracy-wise, there's time pressure. If somebody happens to submit their grant application before you, tough luck. So that's the nature of entrepreneurial decision making too. So not only do you not have all the information you need or want to make a decision, you also don't have much time to go gather more information. Excuse me. And being able to make a quick decision, which is the best available one at the time, even though it's not a perfect decision, is a really important thing about being an entrepreneur as well. The third thing, which makes things even more complicated, is there's usually a big emotional investment. Maybe a little bit less so for you guys right now because it's not actually your drone project yet. Although by the end of the quarter, I imagine you're going to feel ownership over and pride about the project. Same thing for the smart irrigation. Same thing for the software apps. I'm pretty sure that Shout already feels proud about what you're trying to do. If it doesn't work, you take it personally. It's like a personal insult that your idea, it's like your baby. I mean, it's not the same as a real human being, but like you're really, really proud of that business, and it clouds your judgment. Honestly, I started 2 different companies that arguably I never should have started. Like we had some good times, and you guys won't remember it per se because it's before your time, but there's a song that was very popular in 1990-91 by a group called Snap, called I Got the Power. And I got the power. There's a big kind of black power message with the rappers singing and everything. I got to hang out for a whole weekend taking Turbo B, that rapper, all around Sao Paulo, and sitting and translating live from Portuguese to English and English back to Portuguese on a radio station that was probably broadcasting to several million people. That's cool. That's fun. I made a couple grand off of that. For the amount of time and energy I spent, that's a terrible, terrible return on investment. But I'll be damned if I spent 3 years of my life building contacts in the music business not to get that concert done. So, but honestly, I would have been better off by the time he got there, probably good to go ahead and have fun for the weekend, but I would have been better immediately pivoting from anything else that has to do with that and start working on getting to know every single medium-sized concert venue in Brazil. I would have been better off driving my damn car all around Sao Paulo state and talking to every small, medium-sized concert venue possible, getting to know those people, getting to know what their buttons were, and then I know how to sell to them. I shouldn't have spent any more time on the nuances of the contract for Turbo B, but I was proud of it. I couldn't let go. And that's another thing you have to be cognizant of when you're an entrepreneur, is the fact that your own emotional attachment to your company is going to blind you to information that you need. And then the final bullet point here, one of the biggest things that creates entrepreneurial opportunity for anyone is your prior knowledge. Everybody in here has a certain path in life that they've taken. Stephen, if you hadn't had the path you'd taken through life, you wouldn't know that there's a need for a group home like this. But you've taken this path. You haven't taken the other 7 billion possible paths in life. So you don't know that perhaps perhaps your venture actually ends up not being a home but a service, and it ends up being in North Dakota instead of here. That's things that could actually be dynamically successful right away, and you have no way of knowing that. So the more people you expose yourself to with different prior knowledge than what you had, the more chances there are for you to notice opportunities. And everyone in here has a particular prior knowledge. My prior knowledge, for example, in the music business was basically mechanical rights licensing. The thing that I came in and I got really good at doing was all of the nuances of contracts for the rights to the mechanical recording. There's two different kinds of intellectual property rights in the music business. One is mechanical rights, which is the physical song. So, like Sympathy for the Devil by the Stones. People know that song? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So Sympathy for the Devil, a cover version of Sympathy for the Devil just isn't the same thing. Like, you want to hear the original with Mick Jagger being Mick Jagger. That's what makes that song. But the idea of that song, the composition, is a publishing right. The mechanical right, the actual recording that everybody knows, the ooh, 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 that please allow me to introduce myself. That version that everybody knows is the mechanical right. Unfortunately, nobody buys music anymore. Like, my knowledge is basically about rights that have very little exploitable value anymore financially. In some cases, it's still true, but my prior knowledge was in trading the rights to individual tracks of music and then selling those tracks at that time on compilation CDs or on new releases of greatest hits or best of albums, or eventually on iTunes. But that's not where the money is anymore. The money's in other stuff. So my prior knowledge, I should have recognized. If I had talked with people with other prior knowledge, then people who, example, were in people who were in the advertising business, they could have told me, this is tremendously valuable. I need it for this. And never in 1,000 years would I have realized that they need a service that somebody could. They say, I need this kind of music, and I immediately give them 10 different songs that might fit for that advertisement, and they say they pick one. They don't give a crap about any of the stuff I knew. But the fact that I know all this music and I can rattle off the top of my head 10 songs that might fit for the kind of feeling they want, that was the opportunity. But I never would have known that if I hadn't talked to somebody from the advertising business, which I did way too late. So the point here is you want to expose yourself to people with different knowledge and backgrounds as much as possible, because it's going to bubble up more opportunities. How am I doing on time? Okay, cool. So there's not too many slides in here, but there's different ways of thinking that I wanted to talk about a bit about today. First was structural thinking. So, bear in mind that the more other people, the more other information, the more some obscure website from another industry in another state or another country that you can expose yourself to, the better. But whether as an individual or a team, structurally, you want to be able to make creative mental leaps. So what you're looking for in putting together this information is, how can you put together a new product with an existing market, a new market with an existing product, or a new product with a new market? Those are in broad brushstrokes terms, the three options. So, in the case of the drone technology, it's actually interesting. Omar is the one that came in here and talked to the class. There's a second student who's working on other drone projects in the engineering department. As we move forward with the project, I may actually split the team up into 2 different sub-teams for each of those. because each of them is taking a different tack. Omar is actually doing a new product. He's doing a new product for an existing market. The other people are doing, basically, he is trying to do a plane with solar panels on it, which, if he's successful in building that, is in demand already big time in the ag sector. The other student is actually saying, hey, I got UAVs, I got drones. I'm not going to spend any time worrying about putting solar panels on them or having a plane or a helicopter. You tell me, agriculture sector, what you want, and then I will pick the existing product that fits it. So it's basically somebody coming and saying, I need this, and him providing an existing product for it. And then in some cases, Omar, I think, is interested in this combination. What else could we use the drone for? I'm going to, at the end of the day, he's an engineer. What he really wants to do is build a plane with solar. You remember Austin Powers? Maybe, please don't tell me that's before your time, too. It's at least a cool enough movie that people have watched it. Well, there's this scene where Dr. Evil says, I want sharks with frickin' lasers coming out of their head. And at the end of the day, that's really Omar's motivation. He wants a plane with frickin' solar panels on it because it'll be cool and it'll go fast and it'll go far. That's what engineers do. They make good products. And then we help them figure out how the hell you're going to make money off of it. That's what we do as the business side of things. But he's got a new product he's trying to develop, and he knows already that it could work with the agriculture business. But he also would love to know where else it could work. So there's an interesting sort of lesson. It's an interesting lesson from the example down here at the bottom about superficial versus structural similarities. And this is a really good example of why you want people with other prior knowledge. You want to talk with people who are not from the same background and experience set as you. So superficial similarities are basic elements of the product or market that resemble each other, and then structural, like you can see here, are underlying mechanisms of the product or market. So there's a great example that I was reading in a textbook on entrepreneurship that I drew from a little bit to pull this together for the class today, because I, with my blinders on and my prior knowledge, I never would have put together this lecture today. As far as I'm concerned, let's just roll our sleeves up, dive in, start trying to build these ideas. And if we need something along the way, then I'll do a lecture on it. Otherwise, I don't care what's in the textbook. But exposing myself to this, I realized, crap, we could be doing better ventures from the start because I don't think this way enough. And I'm not teaching you guys to think this way enough. So it's a great example of exposing myself to something new and it making a better opportunity for this class. So this example that I read, NASA has arguably the coolest flight simulators in the world for flying the space shuttle, for maneuvering the International Space Station, back in the day for flying the Apollo capsules, and then Gemini and Mercury before that. They've got amazing simulators. The natural idea of what to do with that next when you're done with the NASA program is to use it for commercial pilots. I mean, that's the easy connection. It's something that flies. What else could we do to use the simulator for other things that fly? But actually, the tactile visual interaction is really great therapy to use instead of chemical therapy for kids with ADHD. And if you hadn't been someone who works with kids with ADHD and said, God, I wish I had something else that I could use to get them to rapid fire do a lot of video audio tactile activities. And as soon as somebody says, hey, look at this cool simulator, oh my God, that would be perfect for my ADHD kids. That is a structural similarity that you wouldn't notice unless you talk to people who have a different background than you. So, like, when you talk about thinking structurally, you could go out and search for this. I mean, you could literally, if you're an individual, you could say, okay, like, what are all the elements of this simulator? Okay, it has, like, video information, it has audio information, it has tactile sensations of moving things. What are all the things in the world that need tactile sensations, that need a combination of audio, video, tactile? And you might eventually come across ADHD. You can also just expose yourself to as many different people as possible and bubble these things up. But the point here is that you want to be cognizant of the fact that the big opportunity is where you don't know. That's the $100 million question in entrepreneurship. The big opportunity is the one that's not obvious, and you have to push yourself to make combinations, to look at your product, look at your idea, look at your technology in a different way, or you're never going to find that structural similarity. Make sense? Okay. There's two other ways. So a lot of my colleagues that study entrepreneurship and publish a lot about entrepreneurship, they talk a lot about this structural thinking, this first thing where, you decide, I want to start a new venture. I want to get rich, or I want to be my own boss, and I'm going to look for the best opportunity possible that's going to be the next Google, and I'm going to find it, and I'm going to make it happen. That's sort of the traditional, deliberate idea about how to be an entrepreneur. There's two other ways of looking at it that honestly have been much more my experience and the way that I would have taught this class had it not been for exposing myself to other ideas like I did for this lecture. Bricolage is a French word which originally had to do with basically people like recycling and using things from like trash and trash dumps and like things that were thrown out. And it's a concept of applying the resources at hand to new problems and opportunities. So rather than looking for the perfect opportunity, you just look, what do I have right here? And what could I do with it to make more money, to make more value than what's going on right now? So, in this case, I have a room full of chairs. I have a room full of people. I have a projector set. There's a bunch of cell phones around here. I suppose theoretically, if I wanted to think beyond like the class and the obvious thing of teaching this class, it's probably like, first of all, I know based on projects that I've done in this class, in the small business class, that the fact that you are all here in one place at one time is an opportunity. Like, we sold 170 tickets for the Condors game last spring that we did as a project in one of the other classes because you're all sitting here at one place at one time. And I can go through and do my little like Pied Piper juggling bear act in front of every class, and I know I'm going to sell 2, 3, 4 tickets because you're here. You got excited listening to the Dog and Pony show. You took out the money, you paid right then. Like, the fact that you're here every class, we could cycle in a new product every class session, and some of you are going to be interested in it. Most of you aren't, but that's another opportunity that we could use out of the fact that we're here rather than this class. The fact that there's so many cell phones in one place at one time, I think is probably an opportunity as well. I'm not sure what yet, but it's something. But anyway, as an example, again, from the book that I looked at, but honestly, this is much more what I'm accustomed to. I knew that I had contacts with independent labels in the music business, and I knew that I knew how to negotiate contracts. That's how I started my business. I didn't care whether there was an opportunity or not. I just knew I know how to do this. So who needs, and I knew that I met my now ex-wife, and she's Brazilian, so I knew that I've got like an inside angle in Brazil. So what can I do with inside angle in Brazil and contacts with record labels? Well, I bet I could sign contracts to represent them in Brazil, because Brazil is usually this black box that no one understands. I mean, it's a very funny, sometimes crooked way of doing business. It's Portuguese instead of Spanish, so the Germans don't really speak either Spanish or Portuguese, but for anybody that didn't speak Portuguese to begin with, it's much easier to go from Portuguese to Spanish than from Spanish to Portuguese. Because everybody, like all the rest of the world speaks Spanish, and then there's the damn Brazilians that speak Portuguese. And there's actually also Angola and Mozambique and like East Timor and places you might not realize, but basically it's a funny language, and that's how I got started with it. But the example from the book, which I thought was even more interesting because it kind of applies to the ag sector, a lot of times there's farmland that has old mine tunnels that go underneath it, and that like tanks the value of the farmland because the farmland collapses all the time because it's unstable underneath. And you got all this like toxic and explosive methane gas that builds up in the old mine tunnels. So, like, if you happen to be a farmer who inherited or purchased and didn't realize a plot of land with a bunch of mine tunnels running underneath it, like, you're kind of screwed for doing agriculture in the traditional way. But instead of just bemoaning the fact that you have the wrong land for the original venture, you could take what you do have and do something else with it. And the example was, you can basically take the gas to generate electricity for a local utility. That's pretty easily doable. You just get a generator, like put the methane into the generator, and it'll burn the methane to make electricity. While you're doing that, the generator is going to produce a huge amount of waste heat. That waste heat can actually be used to heat a hydroponic greenhouse, where you don't need the soil anymore. You just need like a small amount of space and the ability to control the temperature, nutrients, and water. Since you have water that you're using to control, to get the plants in the greenhouse growing, you could also, and this is a case of what someone actually did, you can use the troughs of water that's supplying water to the plants to farm tilapia. You can actually put fish in the water, and the fish, the crap from the fish, literally, provides nutrients for the plants. And then the fish can use the water and the heat to sort of grow and live their happy fish farm lives before they're killed and like put on your plate. And then finally, like I said, finally, the fish, it's all part of a cycle. And that started from using the methane as a resource rather than as a liability. So bricolage is another way of looking at entrepreneurial thinking. And this is, first I look at what do I have, and then I look at what could I make out of it that's not being done right now. The third view, effectuation, is similar but a little bit different and more. It's similar and I would say even less structured and more prone to discovering changes that were unexpected. This is actually, this is what I should have been doing with my business all along. Like, I think what I did was pretty much bricolage, but I didn't expose myself to enough new ideas soon enough to realize how I could make value with what I had already. what I should have done was effectuation, which was basically starting from what you have and learning, just doing the next step. And honestly, that is the way I've structured this class. Everything else about that, the three main foci that I talked about, the website, getting the ideas out of your head and onto a website, talking to customers first rather than second, and talking with expert advisors. If you do that, either somebody's going to tell you, my God, this is a great idea, I'm glad you thought of it, or they're going to tell you, I think this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, but you know what I do need is this. It's either going to confirm or it's going to give you the next clue for where you need to go next. And that's kind of the concept of effectuation. And it's personally my favorite way of going about things and the way that I've structured this class. So in this case, you take a look at, can you see okay?
No, you're fine.
Okay. You take it, who are you, what do you know, and who do you know? So like I described to you guys about my old music business, you know, I am Jeremy, who has a passion for music, and like I'm fearless to a fault when it comes to like questionable decisions about my own finances and career and risk taking. Like I have an extreme high tolerance for risk, which eventually lands me in really cool opportunities and got me this amazing job and the opportunity to work with you guys to work on new ventures all the time. This is a dream job. And I got this partially because of my penchant for risk that eventually developed all the knowledge that I have that allows me to then do this job. But that's who I was. I knew that I know a bunch of, what I know is I know how to license music contracts. You know, I know I got it down pat. I know the contracts. I know everything that has to be done. I know what needs to be done to market the stuff. I got this. And who do I know? Well, I pretty much know every independent record label in Germany, and I know my ex-wife. There we go. That's how I started that business. The two things I think I should have thought about more at that time were the concept of affordable loss and acceptable risk. I actually couldn't afford the costs that I took on for my business. I could not afford to run up that much debt. I could not afford to burn that much of the goodwill, basically, with my ex-wife, since she's the one that's paying the bills as I'm trying to get this wacky business off the ground. I couldn't afford that, and I didn't realize that beforehand. And I didn't have a backup option. Eventually I landed on my feet, but it was pretty rough. I could have landed on my feet 3 or 4 years sooner. I blew 3 or 4 years like in the wasteland getting back from that venture not working out because I took on too much risk. So yes, you need to know who you are, what you know, and who you know, but you also need to know how much can I afford to lose? Or how much can I afford to blow? You know, like worst case scenario, I move out of this apartment. I share a place together with somebody else. I get rid of my car. Like you need to know how small can I shrink down the expenses, and can I do that for 6 months? Can I do it for a year? How long can I go, like living off of like Cracker Jack and like tap water? Until like my kids are going to be malnourished because I did that. You know, like you need to know where your like level of affordable loss is, and you need to know after those 6 months, if it doesn't work, what am I going to do? If the answer is I don't know, then it's probably not going to end well, and you're going to have a lot more gray hair by the time you succeed down the road, like I am standing in front of you doing right now. Than you had to have. I didn't need those extra 4 years of gray hair to get back, but I did not think about like what happens next. And those are the two things you need to think about. Once you do that, then this is a great system. And the way I've tried to set this class up, based on my own experience and failures, is we're constantly doing things in here for free. And I'm trying to constantly bubble up as soon as possible whether something is not going to work. You want to know that sooner rather than later. And then you can pivot. and you want to do things as cheap as possible. And my a good buddy of mine from high school is now a really successful venture capitalist and angel investor. He started 2 different telecom companies that work really well, and I can't believe Todd Ryden, of all the people I went to high school with, is the one who ended up being the successful entrepreneurial tycoon. I thought for sure he'd just be throwing back Pabst Blue Ribbons at the local bar, and he'd have some normal job and have a normal life, and I'd see him every time I go back to Indianapolis, and we'd have beers, and that would be Todd. I had no idea that he would go this direction, but he has a phrase that he likes to use, and hopefully, I don't know, he has a very busy schedule now, but about once a year, once every 2 years, I'm able to get him to guest lecture via Skype from Indianapolis, and he has a phrase he loves that some people in here might have heard of, OPM. Anybody know what that means?
Other people's money.
Other people's money. I try to base everything in this class on other people's money, or where is the money coming from. It could be your savings, it could be friends and family, it could be grant money, it could be a loan from the bank. That usually doesn't happen, but it could be. It could be angel investors, also doesn't happen very often, but it could be. But you need new money. If you have savings saved up that was going to be your rainy day fund, and is going to have I talked about rainy day funds in here yet? No. I'll talk about that on Thursday actually. But sometimes you need a certain amount of cash, liquid, just in case your Rebel cruiser gets overtaken by an Imperial Star Destroyer, and you need to put the plans in the droids and jettison them fast. If you don't have an escape pod, Darth Vader's going to get the droids and the plans. Game over. So if you've set it, and in real life terms, that means you need some cash that's accessible. Who knows? Maybe I come in here tomorrow and I've been a little too maverick one too many times, and a little too cavalier one too many times, and my colleagues say, Jeremy, you know what? I don't think it's going to work out. If that ever happens, if I don't have liquid cash to be able to pivot, move to a new place, get resettled, I'm screwed for 3 or 4 years. And if you take that money and you use it for your venture, and your venture doesn't work, then you just use the money that you would have used to save yourself if the venture didn't work. So you really want to, other people's money is an important concept here. As long as you know what you can afford to lose and where it's coming from, excuse me, then you can move forward with this method. Curry in a hurry. This is actually an idea that was. This is not a real company, but this is a philosophical example of this concept that one of my colleagues from Darden, her name's Sarasvati, came up with, and she basically said, as an example of describing how effectuation works, think about this. I have basically no money, but I love the idea. I love Indian food. I know I can make Indian fast food. I know it. I know it in my gut, literally, no pun intended. So there's 2 different ways you could go with that. I'm going to do this. I've got some money that I can burn. I don't have very much, but I know that I can afford to only work 10 hours a week, and that'll pay my bills, and I can still keep my rainy day account here. And then the other 30 hours of a normal 40-hour work week, I can go around and try and do something with this idea. But that's it. So I could either do a partnership with an existing restaurant, or I could do delivery to friends I know at work as 2 different options. Next step, easy next step to make without any additional capital, nothing else except time and effort. So depending on which way you go, different things happen. So if you did the partnership with the existing restaurant, you're going to have a bunch of existing Indian food customers or existing sort of sit-down restaurant customers who maybe don't have an Indian option, but there's another type of food that's otherwise served in that restaurant, you're going to get feedback from those customers as to, menu options that people really liked, stuff that they didn't like, based on what people say, when you give them, and what people say, ugh, when you give them. You'll know which things to do next. And you may find that you need more fried foods and less steamed foods, so that pushes you in a direction of what to invest in next for your resources. And it gives you an environment to learn in with very low cost to learn. Or if you're delivering to people at work, you may bring the food and they like the food, but you sit and you talk for half an hour, and they just love hearing your story about like the time you spent in India and how it changed your life and your passion for cooking. And honestly, they didn't really give a crap about the food. They just like your story, And what you find out by talking to these people is actually, I could write a cookbook and start offering classes. I don't need to screw delivering the food. I'm not going to do a restaurant. I'm going to do a service that exposes people to my passion for Indian food. And then I'm going to hire other people to do these classes, and we're going to franchise it to other cities. That was totally not what you started out to do. You started out trying to do Indian fast food restaurant, and you don't have any money. So you start doing the next thing on the list and talking to customers first, like I mentioned in the critical foci, bubbles up the fact that what people really want or desire is to hear these stories and to learn to cook new ways of cooking. They don't need food delivered at work. They want to be able to make this food themselves at home, and they want to hear the stories, and that's really what they want. So the whole concept of effectuation is you take your affordable loss, acceptable risk, and the existing resources you have, and you take the next step that you can afford within that context and listen to what the marketplace is telling you. So cognitive adaptability, it's amazing. I always worry at the beginning, only got 6 slides. It's an hour and 15 minutes. How in the world am I don't want to disappoint you guys by getting done at 20-minute mark and be like, yeah, well, that's it. That really, really important topic that I told you was super, super important? Well, it only took me 20 minutes. And now I got more stuff that I haven't gone through yet. We're running a little bit late. So let me go through this a bit faster. This is going to get us to that little test I wanted you to take. So the extent to which you are, this is the definition of cognitive adaptability up here. The point here is, and this is what I'm going to hand out to you guys right now, and then we'll do the second lecture after that. The point here is you want to be as cognizant or conscious as possible of what you don't think about. It's a really hard thing. It's counterintuitive because we always think about what's on our minds, what we know our assignments are, what our passions are, what our knowledge is. You need to think about what you don't know. And depending on what you don't know and in what areas, this is part of what we're going to talk about more on Thursday. In addition to your PDP, I actually want you to come up with a plan of how are you going to ask yourself comprehension, connection, strategic, and reflection questions on a weekly or a monthly basis in the future to make sure that you're not getting tunnel vision. Bless you. And I've listed some generic questions underneath those, but basically comprehension questions are really asking, it's doing an inventory like I did at the beginning here of everything in this room. Okay? I'm sure I can make something out of the fact that there's tables and chairs in here. I don't know what yet, but maybe host events in the hours when the room's not being used. And then the fact that you guys are all here, like I talked about before. First of all, I make a list of everything. Do I understand this room? Well, actually, there's a whole ventilation system that sometimes doesn't work very well, but it's here, and that whole infrastructure is there. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe we could actually use the same pipes to do. I need to make a list of everything that's in here, and do I really understand every piece of this room? Do I know every piece of this room? That's your comprehension questions. Connection questions, how is this similar to something else I know about? And honestly, I would add there, how is this similar to something else someone else knows about? If I brought my good friend who visited me all summer, her dad, who unfortunately recently passed away, he was the draftsman basically for an architecture firm, and I guarantee you, if I brought Bill Terrell in here and had him look at this room, he would notice completely different things that I never would have thought about, like how the wiring is set up based on where you see the outlets. That's the first thing he would think about. I don't think about that. I think about you guys standing here. That's my perspective. But you want to ask yourself, after you have that list, how is this related to something else I know from the past? And then, based on how it's related, can I bring together something from the current environment with an application that I'm familiar with from a former environment? And then finally, when I look at all that together, what are the questions, what are the problems that are going to come up, what are the questions other people are going to have? Can I brainstorm as many of those as possible to think about them sooner rather than later? So with that being said, let me hand this out to everybody quick. I don't need it back. I just want you to read through this for a second. Think for yourself about where your answers fall on this spectrum. So it's two pages front and back. Huh? Where is the sign-in sheet? It needs to get over here still. Thank you for asking. Yeah. Pass whatever extra back to the back. I ran out towards the back. Again, there's no right or wrong answers. It's just ask. This is really a prompt to yourself of where are your blind spots, basically? What are the things that you don't know and you don't think about as much as you could or should? Extra? Cool. Thanks. Bless you. So, I gave you guys, there's a couple more slides I want to get over before we get done. So, if you're not finished yet, the thing I would suggest is there's 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 5 different like sections of this survey: goal orientation, metacognitive knowledge, metacognitive experience, metacognitive choice, and monitoring. Try to make sure you answer 1 or 2 of the questions in each section, because they all are like similar theme. Like, you don't have to do every one in each section, but try and get a couple, because I want to talk about it briefly, and then I'll do the rest of the slides. Has everybody had a chance to answer at least a couple in each area? Who needs more time? Okay. Huh? No, just for answer a couple in each category. Yeah, so in order to get you guys out of here on time, please feel free to complete the rest of it later. There's no right or wrong answers. I'm curious for those of you, especially towards the front, because you guys got started last in the back. So, who was able to get through the whole thing here, closer to the front, or anybody? Somebody who's not Steven. Yes, it's Valente, right? Okay. So, did you notice there's certain areas where you're higher and certain areas you're lower? Yeah. Like, what did you notice about your own thinking?
It's a bit lower than that.
Which one? There's 3 different metacognitive areas. The metacognitive choice. So basically, you're often not thinking about all the options that you could pursue to solve a problem before you jump in and solve it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing anything else? Where were you high in this?
Goal orientation.
Yep. Same thing for me. Anybody notice another pattern of their own thinking? Yeah, I think I started filling it out while I was having you guys fill it out, and my goal orientation tends to be off the charts. I don't think I have a hard time accepting goals from anybody who's not named Jeremy Woods. I authority problem in some ways that way. I super independent, and actually for the metacognitive experience. Thinking about where I need to go before I start a task and being conscious of how I spend my time, I'm actually pretty good about that. And the monitoring thing, sort of reflecting a bit about whether I get it, I'm good on those. But the best way to solve a problem, or whether I've actually looked at all options, I always ready, fire, aim, rather than ready, aim, fire. There's benefits to that, because you start to the rest of the world will tell you if you're wrong or not if you fire and then see if something good happens or something bad happens. But it's not necessarily the most efficient way to do things all the time. So for everybody in here, I want to make sure to get to a couple other slides and get you out of here on time. But please take a look at where you're lower on these scales, and when we talk more on Wednesday, I want you to think about what could you do on a weekly or monthly basis to push yourself to think more about the areas where you're lower. Okay, so last couple of slides to go through today are on entrepreneurial intentions and self-efficacy. So huge, another multi-million-dollar question. Like, why do some individuals actually act and start new companies and, build new ventures and work for themselves and other people don't? It's a big question, especially for those of us researchers, because lots of people have good ideas. Lots of people have a passion to start their own business, and not to discourage people in this room, but the majority of you are not going to end up owning your own business. You're going to get some job and you're going to work from 9 to 5, and that's it. I don't want it to happen, but I know from my own life, I know from classes of students in the past, it's going to happen for a lot of you. And it's always hard to predict, because the student you think, the colleague of mine, like one of my roommates when I did my MBA, let alone my roommates, but in the entire class of 300 or so full-time MBA students that my year at UCLA, the person I thought was the least entrepreneurial, the least tough to actually make it and survive long enough as an entrepreneur was this roommate. And the guy who actually was most quickly, most directly successful, was starting a company, doing a round of venture funding, the whole nine, was Andrew. What? But it's because of the unique combination of these factors. So, first of all, the reason that this happens is because A, desirability, and B, feasibility. So, desirability, do you perceive an opportunity? Part of the thing was that Andrew had very, very specific knowledge of engineering. So he knew what was not getting done in the world of engineering services at that time. And this goes back to all the stuff we talked about in the former slides about entrepreneurial perspective and exposing yourself to as many different pieces of information as possible and noticing in the first place that there is an opportunity. And then finally, feasibility. What behaviors do I need to do to, you may realize there's an opportunity, but you may not feel comfortable at all that you have what it takes, or you have the resources, or you have the capability to be successful in doing it. And this is the concept of self-efficacy. And just the same way I talked in the first set of slides about things you can do to broaden your mind and broaden the information you're exposing yourself to, there's things you can do to improve your confidence and comfort level about your ability to be successful as an entrepreneur. One of which is this class. That's why I'm here. Hopefully you feel more comfortable about connecting the dots from wanting to make something happen to making it happen after you're done with this class. But just a couple of general pieces of information here. In some ways, you need to be at the right age to have you need the right amount of experience, resources, and energy. If you're too young, you basically don't have enough experience and you don't have enough money or access to money to be able to start a successful venture. And once you get past a certain age, you're just too tired. You're too tired to do everything that it takes. It's like an athletic event trying to start a business, and run a business. So most entrepreneurs start their first venture sometime between the age of 22 and 45. And most of them, it's interesting, start in their early to mid 30s. Tends to be a little bit older for women and younger for men. But I didn't actually know this. This is some more stuff that I got out of the book just to expand my offering for you guys and the value that I deliver in here. But that parallels exactly when I started my first business. I was 33. It's spot on, and I couldn't really have done it. I tried sooner, but I never got past this is a great idea. What do I do next? I never got past that before that age. And education. This is the part where I talk about the class a little bit. If you have the chance to practice this, there's not that many skills that you need to make a business work. You need some basic ability to do product development. You need a really good ability to do guerrilla marketing and sales. You need some basic financial ability. You need the ability to acquire capital one way or another, whether it's from friends and family or venture capital or grants or your own savings. You need to figure out what capital you need and where to get it. And there's some other operational stuff that I left out here, but I'll teach you all these things in this class, and more so than teaching, because it's not really rocket science, is that you get a chance to practice these things, and hey, wow, I did it. That was easy. Or, damn it, like that whole guerrilla marketing thing worked really well until the events thing. Events, that was just a complete disaster. So, well, you know where you need to keep working next. And just the opportunity to practice that in this class will improve your confidence and ability to do that in the future in a real venture. And some of the ventures we go do in here are going to end up becoming real ventures. But even if they don't, the fact that you had a chance to practice it is going to improve your confidence to do it in the future. And then specific experience from work history. If I had not done what I did, I'm sorry, this is like right in your way, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's okay.
Okay. If I had not done what I did with music licensing, I wouldn't have realized that I recognized the opportunity because I spent like the better part of 3 years locking horns with my bosses every day about how there's like 10 opportunities for us to make money with this music right here. And either you ignore entirely what I said, or you actively undermine it because you think it's taking away from something else. It's not. We're leaving money on the table. And I saw it, and I just, a nice way to put it would be, I decided to go out and take advantage of an opportunity. A bad way to put it would be, I complained so much that I eventually got fired. One way or the other, there's an opportunity I recognized from my work experience that wasn't being taken advantage of in that environment. So it's the combination of these three things that give you the confidence that you know what needs to be done. And then, this is the last slide. Role models and support systems. When you see other people do, I think one of the biggest things that, actually, I didn't need a role model. I think I was so super confident in that side of things that I didn't need a role model. But if I did, watching my dad get as far as he did with his own ventures, and he wasn't very successful either, but realizing that my impossible to pin down, probably had ADD his whole life and wasn't diagnosed with it because he's a generation before that. If he can manage to build as much of a business as he could, it can't be that hard. A lot of times it's not necessarily a role model that you learn from. It's also role models that you just see, well, crap, that person's exactly like me. If they did this, I know I can do it. And then also professional and moral support. It's really important to have a support network around you for what you don't know technically, and for, that you're going to have problems, you're going to have failure, and you're going to take it personally. And if you don't have people to tell you that you didn't throw your life away, it's going to be really tough to persevere sometimes. So we'll talk about this more on Thursday, but I want you to think about where's your support system going to come from, and how are you going to push yourself to think in different ways. That's part of what we're going to talk about on Thursday, plus LinkedIn and your PDP. Make sure that I have your sign-up sheet, and this thing was for you, so please keep that with you and think about where you kind of answered lower. Huh?
I'm the second one.
Okay. Oh, yeah, hang on. So what do I need to send again? I forget.
Is this AJ?
So I'm this one.
Yep.
All this three, I have to project, and then I already create account.
You need to connect to me.
Yeah, I'm enrolled in your 4,000 class.
Huh?
I'm enrolled in your 4,000 class, management 4,000.
Oh.
And then,
are we already connected on 4,000?
yeah.
I thought for sure. Okay. That's fine. What project do you want to work on in here?
I will check. So,
Huh?
so which project do you? What's the titles you have?
So we've got one that's working on here. Actually, let's. Everybody that has a question for me, ask me out in the hallway so I can get out of the way of the other class. Okay? I'm gonna get out of this spot and then answer as soon as I go outside. Okay?
Okay.
Just wait for me out there. I'll be right there. Same thing. I'll meet you out there in just a second. Okay? The ad slip? Yeah, that's fine. I'll sign it out there.
I just need you to sign this. So
Yes. As soon as I'm finished, I'll sign it out in the hallway. Okay? The last professor, like, she's getting really sick of me, like, being overtime. So I'm more cognizant of it. I gotta get out.